Quote from the book: strategic alliances with suppliers are appropriate when a company does not wish or is not able to maintain certain strategic capabilities internally or has no possibility of vertical integration. And further down, the core aspect of a strategic alliance is that it is designed for the long term. It is not subject to any project-oriented limits. H8 or strategic alliance is a method that should be deployed very rarely, and many companies may never deploy it at all. But if it is appropriate, it will have a huge impact. In this video, I will show you when to deploy it, how it is different from normal procurement practices, and I will look at some of my favorite companies for a case example. Let's get started. Sometimes good procurement practices can get in the way. Imagine a situation where there's only really one supplier who is qualified to take your business, and this supplier really would like to work with you. We're not talking about a nasty monopoly that you would normally find in the top left of the chessboard. No, here we have a situation where you are super attractive to the supplier and the supplier is super attractive to you. The instinct of most procurement people would be to fight this. They would perceive this lack of competition as a bad thing. If we are in discrete manufacturing industries, like at the car maker, you may observe two types of behavior. The good procurement people, unhappy about this perceived lack of competition, may force engineering somehow to create competition and enable a second best supplier. The not so good procurement people, and yes, we also have those, may resort to bluffing and create some artificial competition. In either case, their good intentions and their sometimes good or sometimes not so good execution will drive a wedge in between the company and the supplier. The supplier may hold back just a little and not dedicate the full mindshare to the company. After all, there always is the risk that the company may go with the second best alternative, and beyond losing business, the supplier may be concerned about knowledge and IP leaking to that competitor. Also, internally clinging on to the mere idea of competition may not be a good thing. It certainly ties up a lot of resources in engineering and in procurement. Engineering people would be forced to essentially waste time on kind of enabling a second best supplier. Procurement would spend a lot of time preparing award decisions that ultimately will only have one logical winner. And then there's the really big issue, all this lost potential. Just imagine what this perfect supplier could do for you if both you and the supplier went all in. So this sounds too theoretical for you? Well, if you're using an iPhone or an iPad, you're working with products that are the result of such a strategic alliance. In this case example, the company is Apple. Apple is launching a new generation of iPhone every October, and every generation of iPhone has a new generation of Apple's A-series CPU that is 20 to 30% more powerful than the previous generation. No competitor can match this performance. And Apple has become so confident in its CPU capabilities that they are in the process of ditching Intel for Macs and are switching over to the M-series CPUs. When I talk about Apple's A-series and M-series CPUs, I'm referring to CPUs that have been designed by Apple's Silicon team. The actual making of the CPUs has always been outsourced to suppliers referred to as Foundries. Let's take a look at this chart to see who the suppliers are. The names are on the top and the bottom of the chart. You will notice that the last time Apple had two suppliers was back in 2015 when they had TSMC and Samsung in parallel for the A9 CPU that launched with the iPhone 6s. Ever since, Apple has put all its eggs into one basket with TSMC, and clearly this dependency on one supplier has not hurt Apple. After all, they are the world's most valuable company. TSMC is also doing well. They are years ahead of competition and basically completely dominate 7 and 9 nanometer node production. And with the biggest investment ever by a company, they are now making a big push into 3 nanometer production. All of this works for Apple and TSMC because they clearly understand that they need each other. Obviously, they are working on a multi-year roadmap of product generations. For Apple, shopping around would not make sense. With Apple, TSMC has a reliable customer to utilize their assets. So let's look at the key takeaways here. First, a strategic alliance makes sense when there's a strategic capability that you don't want to have in-house and there's a very limited number of suppliers who can do it. Second, with a strategic alliance, you bring the appropriate long-term perspective into the business and you maximize the mindshare of the supplier. Third, a strategic alliance only really works in a relatively predictable business. The more unstable, unpredictable, change-oriented and dynamic a market is, the greater the risk associated with relying on just one partner. Okay, now it is your turn. In your company, do you see any good case for a strategic alliance with a supplier? And if so, what would it take in order to make sense for both for your company and for the supplier? Should you have any question, let me know in the comments down below, and as always, I promise to respond within 24 hours. Thank you for watching and I see you in the next one. Bye!